So I was 24 when I started Clean Harbors. I had no clue on how big this company was going to get. As you can imagine, I was interested in starting a business. I had been working in the environmental space prior to that. I left Northeastern University to actually work full-time in the environmental industry. My boss was a former Boston Patriot football player, and I really enjoyed working for him. And tragically, he died of a heart attack at 46 years old. And
Oh, wow.
because of that and changes that were happening after he passed away, I decided I want to go off and kind of do my own thing. And never in my wildest dreams did I think we would ever grow to the size that we're at today.
Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast, where we bring you interviews with industry leaders, climate champions, sustainability practitioners, EHS and hazmat professionals making an impact in their businesses today. Each leader solving complex challenges and delivering solutions within their areas of expertise. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and thanks for joining us today. Before we jump in, make sure to follow us on your devices and visit my website at www.seankgrady.com and sign up for our newsletter and email announcements. Now let's get started. Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and today's guest is the former CEO of Clean Harbors. He's now the chairman of the board, and Alan McKim. He's the founding member of Clean Harbors. He's founded the company in 1980. He established Clean Harbors to become one of North America's leading providers of environmental and industrial services. They're probably the largest in the country at this point, with revenues over $5 billion. So this man is a real entrepreneur that started from just basically four guys in a truck. So we're really excited to bring Alan on the show today. And, Alan has grown Clean Harbor steadily over the years, over 4 decades, really, through M&A and acquisitions of over 60 companies. And he's really become one of the leading, providers of these services. His organization is over 20,000 people. He's got over 10,000 vehicles in his transportation fleet and network, over 700 locations and service centers, and 100 permitted waste facilities, which is amazing. And I think another interesting, tidbit about Alan that maybe some of you don't know, but he was on Undercover Boss. And I really thought I saw the episode on Undercover Boss, and Alan, you did a fantastic job of getting in there and getting your hands dirty and seeing what it is on the front lines. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But one of the reasons we're here to talk today is about your book. Your great book called Doing the Doing. And I want to share with our listeners that book and the insights that you gave in that book. And so, Alan, welcome to the show.
It's great to be with you, and thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look back, when you founded the company in 1980, was your ultimate vision to always become like the largest environmental industrial services provider in the country? Or did that kind of vision evolve over time? And, as you kind of grew with the regulatory landscape and whatnot, talk a little bit about that, if you could.
Sure. So I was 24 when I started Clean Harbors, and I had no clue on how big this company was going to get. As you can imagine, back then I was interested in starting a business. I had been working in the environmental space prior to that. I left Northeastern University to actually work full-time in the environmental industry. And my boss was a former Boston Patriot football player. And I
cool.
really enjoyed working for him. And tragically, he died of a heart attack at 46 years old. And
Oh, wow.
because of that and changes that were happening after he passed away, I decided I want to go off and kind of do my own thing. And never in my wildest dreams did I think we would ever grow to the size that we're at today.
Wow. I'm sure it's been just an amazing journey, or a ride, so to speak, up and down. I'm sure there was some roller coasters and ups and downs and valleys and high peaks, mountaintops. When you go through this growth of this company, if you could maybe talk about a few of the major events that occurred that helped catapult Clean Harbors to become what they are today, and what were the highlights of some of these big events in your life?
Sure. Well, initially when we started out, we were doing emergency response work and a lot of tank cleaning and other environmental service type work here in New England. But RCRA had just kicked in 1980, and this was a result of a lot of the Superfund
Right.
sites that were showing up. And if you remember back in the day, customers would have their barrel recycler take their waste away back in the 30s and 40s. And
Mhm.
the barrel recyclers had more interest in the barrel than they did what was in the waste, right? And
Yeah,
so
right.
years and years of kind of handling waste that way resulted in a lot of locations around the country really creating huge problems like Love Canal. And so we hit the ground at just the right time in 1980 because customers were now starting to be held responsible for things that happened years and years before. And so
Mhm.
they decided that they really needed to set up their own environmental departments. They really needed to focus on who was doing the work that they had doing. And so, being new and not having any negative history and kind of the new organization out there to offer these kind of services, we really hit the market right.
Yeah,
And
you guys were at the right time at the right place, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I would say that the RECRA regulations are really what drove our growth. But more importantly, we followed what our customers needed, right? And so early on, GE was my biggest account. And
Okay.
GE was also figuring out how to stop doing business with a lot of these other players and like shrink the number of suppliers. And they said, look, if you want to continue to be one of our suppliers, you got to grow and you got to expand. And, they had plants in Ohio, they had plants in New York, they had plants in Arizona. So we really grew as a result of our customer demands, forcing us to grow. And it was just so exciting back then.
I mean, that's great to hear because, and I guess maybe with a little trepidation, you're like, yeah, I got this client. They want us to grow. They say they're going to give us a bunch of business if I do this. But then there's this uncertainty, like, will they really give us that work if I do that? Right.
Right. Absolutely.
I bet
And
there
I
was a
think
little concern.
I think it was so much part of our acquisition strategy is like, how do we open up and get into those areas where they were so that we could service their needs? And that's what really drove the growth of the company. And quite frankly, one of the reasons why we went public back in 1987.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, to look and watch the journey of Clean Harbors. And, as an industry professional, I've worked with you guys over the years and seen the acquisitions over the years and going, wow, I can't believe they just did that. Or, oh my goodness, they just acquired this. These guys are like really going after the market. This is crazy. And, I think too, when I look back, you guys also were kind of in this mode of, hey, we'll be that first responder when the emergency happens. And in the book, which was great, you kind of detail kind of that exhilaration, that adrenaline rush you guys got when you were the first on site to win the work. But when you start to see some of the bigger events that happened, like 9/11, Katrina, some of those bigger events, you guys were at the forefront and in there at the beginning. I mean, talk about some of those events that also catapulted the growth of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really in our DNA here. Our culture is very much a response driven organization. And the employees here love, running out the door. The bell rings, we run out the door and we go after the events, right? And
Yeah.
we want to do good things for our customers and obviously for the environment. And so we've really been involved with so many events over the years. And you mentioned Katrina and Rita, for example. The BP spill was
Oh,
a
yeah.
major
Oh,
cleanup effort. 9/11. Prior to that, just a number of major oil spills throughout North America that happened, whether it was Valdez up in Alaska, where we provided resources there, or anything that you can possibly imagine when there's a large response needed. Our culture here and our mindset is very much response driven. It's really about who we are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love the name Clean Harbors. I mean, it's like, and I used to be a regulator way back in my early career. And I started out in the Office of Water Management. And so we were the river rats basically, because we were out on the river doing the water quality studies and doing the fish kill evaluations and things like that. This is way back in the early 90s. Not as far back as you go, but I mean, still, nonetheless, it was back then. And so I always really liked the water. When I heard that it was Clean Harbors, like, these guys get it, man. They're cleaning the waters, cleaning the harbors. This is what they do. This is like innate in their DNA. This is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
Oh,
it's a it's a great name, and our logo sort of has survived a lot of marketing departments here. A lot of people look at that and, hey, maybe we should think something differently. And it survived the many, many different ideas that people have had. And I love the brand, and obviously I love the name.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, exactly. I mean, and when you think about it, when you're in this growth mode at the very beginning, in 1980, you start. I mean, fast forward 7 years, and now you're going public in 7 years. That's like so fast. What was that like?
I think it's a little bit like what's happening in the market right now with, AI, right? It was hot. Environmental was hot back then. A lot of companies were going public, and we were only a $70 million company when we went public.
Mm-hmm.
We only initially were going to raise $15 million. And at that point, I only had $15,000 of equity in the business. And
Uh-huh.
so it was like, we really needed to get some cash. We really need to kind of get away from just having traditional bank borrowing. And so we need to raise some money, and we were going to raise $15 million. And then the crash of 87 happened.
Right.
And you remember in October of 87, we still decided, let's go. We've done all the work. We've got all the audit work done. We've spent a ton of money. So we subsequently raised $8 million. And that took us 2 weeks to go out and do the road shows all over the country to raise $8 million. And you see companies today going public with $8 billion. You know
Yeah,
what
it's
I mean?
crazy, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, but what was great about it is that it gave us liquidity. It gave us cash. We did a secondary offering in 88 at $15 a share. So the stock rose, and we raised some more capital. And then we were able to use our equity, our publicly traded equity, to buy other companies. So we bought another public company in 1989 called ChemClear.
Okay.
And that gave us plants in the Mid-Atlantic, in the Midwest, even in the West Coast. And so again, part of our growth strategy was trying to figure out, how do we continue to grow to meet our customers' needs? And having that public equity really helped us out.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys were in that growth mode, looking at like the mindset, or I guess being in the war room, saying, okay, where can we grow? Who's got the best assets out in the market that are suffering that we can go and fix? And I love in the book when you talked about, you've always had this like innate kind of drive to turn one man's junk into another man's treasure, right?
Absolutely.
And so, when you see that and you have that mindset and you start evaluating these opportunities and these other assets that are there, you got to be licking your chops half the time when you're looking at these deals.
Absolutely. And we have been really fortunate that a number of the acquisitions we've made, and we've done over 80 of them now, have really worked well for us. And I think the secret to our success has really been to have a single platform to run our business. So when we acquire a business, we really put them on our platform. And from a quote to cash, accounting, HR systems, customer master file, all that kind of stuff is so important, because we end up, when we acquire companies, we find it so fascinating to see how inefficient they are, because they have all these disparate systems
Oh,
that
yeah.
don't talk to each other, and they have people in between. And so I think we've been able to take advantage of companies that have been not doing well, maybe as a result of recession, like the early 90s, or the 2008 Great Recession. So Laidlaw going in bankruptcy back in 2000. So we really, in many cases, bet the company. But looking back, I mean, they were fantastic deals. Fantastic deals.
Oh yeah. I mean, just when I mean, we're going to get off topic a little bit here, but I mean, because I want to segue into the whole Safety Kleen situation took the whole, I think, industry by storm and by shock. And I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, they just got Safety Kleen. This was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the first part of that business that we bought out of bankruptcy was just some wonderful assets. I mean, over $1 billion worth of assets we got.
Yeah.
And and the key there was, we had the ability to come up with the financial assurance to meet what the EPA needed for those plants to stay open. But after 3 years, I mean, we were really starting to cook back in 2004, 2005. And then subsequently in 2012, when we bought the remaining Safety Kleen, the parts washer business,
Yeah.
that became just a fantastic business for us. And bringing those businesses together, which was the original goal back in the day,
Yeah.
bringing them together has been the best thing, I think, to help both of those companies do so well.
You know, in your book, there was a conversation in one of the chapters. I can't remember which chapter it was now, but it was about the Safety Kleen conversation. And you met with the former CEO of Laidlaw, who was taking some position on you,
Right.
unbeknownst to you. And you kind of won the battle on that situation, if you ask me.
Yeah, we did. We were close, though. I mean, we
Uh,
had publicly traded debt back then, and they evidently had gathered up that public debt, and they were maybe looking for us to trip and fall, and
yeah.
it turned out to be the other way around, and it was just a amazing. And you know what's so amazing is the people that came over
Oh, right.
from that business. I mean, yes, fantastic leaders. Many of them had already been with that company for years and subsequently stayed with us for years. So the longevity of a lot of our leadership is a result of us not only acquiring businesses with great people, but keeping them and really making them part of our company's future now.
Yeah, no, that's so spot on. The recognition of good talent like that, and then keeping them and bringing them in, and because I've been through some mergers, acquisitions before, and they promise you, oh, we're gonna let you guys kind of maintain some leadership roles and some control over managing the business, and then reality sets, and you're like you're not doing any of that. That's very frustrating in life, in business life, but it's great when you can recognize the value of that business and maintain that, and then continue to grow, invest, and fix things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, having that knowledge of how those businesses ran and the relationships they had with their customers was so important to hold on to those people, and we've been blessed, to have such a great team here that stayed together and worked together for a long, long time.
That Safety Kleen business, I mean, they were used oil recyclers, parts washers, and solvent recyclers. And while they were there picking up those products and servicing those products, they were either ones selling other products to them, parts, equipment, or
Sure.
PPE or whatever materials and supplies. And then they were picking up waste too. So they would, have multiple revenue streams as I kind of saw the business. And I was like, wow, you guys just expanded your whole business client list by like tenfold with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, 300,000 customers,
Wow.
many of them small companies, that were on a subscription that we went out to every, 12 weeks and provided that parts washer service. But as we continue to expand the kind of services to meet those customers' needs,
Right.
we just kept growing and growing, and it was fantastic.
Ah, that's crazy. Just amazing. In your book, Doing the Doing, it speaks to the dedication and execution of the work that you've done at Clean Harbors. But, beyond the literal meaning, what is the core philosophy or principles you believe that has been the most, I guess, single greatest driver of the success of Clean Harbors?
I think it's our focus on people. I think knowing that our workforce is our number one asset, and I think the entrepreneurial spirit that we have here, the responsive culture that I mentioned earlier is so important. But I think what's really been important is people could grow in this company as we grew.
Uh-huh.
And so my original 4 employees stayed here for 40 years. And it was just an amazing opportunity. And many, 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 many other people grow inside the company. And when you're growing, you provide so many opportunities for people. And it's great that they don't have to leave to go, grow in their career. They could move into a different part of the company. We could educate them. We could get them, degrees. We could provide them training. And because we really felt that the longer we can keep our employees, the safer we're going to be, number one, because we know that safety is most impacted by young new employees. So it's really going to improve our safety, but it's really going to provide sort of that mature workforce that really understands who we are and what kind of services we offer. So that was really, really important.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that continuity, you're able to continue to manage and grow with, employees. Plus, I mean, you have to admit, it's probably a big cost savings too at the end of the day. You know,
Oh
you
my God,
think
yeah.
about the onboarding of new employees and the HR. And I mean, oh my goodness, today it's way bigger than it ever was when you started in 1980, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It must cost, I'd be guessing, because I don't know the exact number, but it's probably $15,000 to bring an employee on now with all the training and,
Oh, yeah.
medical and all the things.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you discuss in the book trials and tribulations. And can you share some important or how important it was for you to have a mentor or mentors that were helping you throughout the tough times when you were growing the business? I really liked in the book how you kind of were able to reach out and find a few of those gentlemen that really helped you in certain ways to help you educate yourself more or just understand the business better. I mean, talk about that if you could, about how important it was for you.
Sure. Yeah, and I think before we went public, I had gone back to Northeastern to get my MBA, and I met a professor there who really helped me a lot going through school while I was still running the company and still raising 4 children. It was a tough time, right, to be
Heck yeah.
balancing all those things. And he was a fantastic man, and I asked him to join our board, and he became our first board member. He became our lead director, and subsequently for 30 years, he was my lead director.
Wow.
My lawyer, who actually helped found the company, who incorporated the company,
Yeah.
was our general counsel for 40 plus years. And
Hmm.
and so those early folks were so critical to me personally and also to the company's success. But also along the way, whether it be bringing board members in who could help with a certain area of expertise that maybe we were struggling with at the time, whether it
Mhm.
be regulatory or it might have been finance or it might have been, growth, whatever the issue is. I think
Yeah.
that was so critical for us. But then bring in leaders, bring in people. So when we got to $100 million, it was very much hitting the wall. And none of us in the company at that time had ever worked for $100 million company.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so bringing people in that, had the experience, people like Clyde Keaton, as I mentioned, who came over from GE, for example. And it was really important to bring people in from outside the company as much as it was to help people inside the company grow. So
Right.
what I realized is that you really needed both. You just can't have it all be an internally growth orientated company, right? You've got to get people who have expertise and leadership skills to come in as you continue to see the company grow. And obviously, the first year in business, we did $600,000. This past year, we did $6 billion. You need different people.
You
You
need a
need different
lot of
people.
people.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. Hello, ET Nation. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you're enjoying the interviews we bring you, consider supporting the program by visiting my website at SeanKGrady.com and buy me a cup of coffee. Proceeds will go towards helping me continue producing timely content and offset production costs. I'd also like to take a moment and recognize a few of our sponsors of the show who have been amazing partners and are ET Nation legends. If you're looking for a drilling and environmental contracting firm to help you delineate the extent of contamination at your site, then look no further than Cascade Environmental. Cascade has over 37 offices across the country and offers a huge range of environmental and geotechnical drilling, site characterization, and remediation services. With their huge fleet of equipment and nationwide coverage, Cascade is a great choice to support your environmental and infrastructure needs. To learn more, check out their website at cascade-env.com. That's cascade-env.com. Hey, are you looking for an equipment rental company to help you with your next wastewater remediation or waste management project? E-Tank is the only environmental equipment rental company in the industry that offers 100% guaranteed, certified clean temporary liquid storage tanks at no additional cost. This protocol gives peace of mind for the previous customer by limiting their downstream liability, as well as the future customer by preventing any cross-contamination for all of their rental tanks. E-Tank also runs a one-of-a-kind complete maintenance program for all rental items, including liquid tight roll-off containers, fluid transfer pumps, and filtration items. The next time you are presented with an environmental challenge, call E-Tank to come up with the solution for your problem. I want to thank one of our sponsors, WasteLink. WasteLink is the all-in-one software platform transforming how environmental professionals manage waste, connecting generators, service providers, and disposal facilities in a way that is simple, connected, and transparent. Their platform helps streamline everything from waste profiling and routing to inventory management and billing, giving you the tools you need to operate more efficiently and reduce cost. Whether you're a generator looking for better options or a service provider seeking greater efficiency, WasteLink has you covered. If you're ready to take control of your waste management processes and optimize your business, visit wasteLink.com to schedule a demo today. No, that's great. I mean, and I think as a CEO, as you in your position, it may at times may have been a struggle or a challenge to realize I need to let go of the reins in a certain area of this business because I can't do everything, or that's really not my best, highest value use, but it's important, but that's not my best skill. What was that like, making those decisions to bring in the right people?
It was the most important thing, certainly for me, because I wore all the hats early on, as any entrepreneur does who owns the business. But I really felt like, I really focused on technology. I really love technology, and I think I really could help the business and run better and more efficiently with technology. And I also felt it was a key differentiator.
Oh yeah.
As it related to our acquisition. So building out software and building out platforms has been something that has really been my focus, and realizing that maybe Eric Gerstenberg is a better engineer than me and he does a better job of running our plants. So how do we continue to develop Eric to become the chief operating officer and now the co-CEO, right? So we definitely bring people in and realize whether they're in transportation, they're in safety, or they're in finance, bringing those people in and complementing your skills to allow you to do the things that you really, really are good at. And that was tough to let go when you had to start giving up all the power, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think as an entrepreneur, that's one of the things I learned is that you've got to surround yourself with people that are better than you, especially in the areas that might be your weak spot.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, and I guess that's just one of those events in the journey. You can just go, "Oh, I have to do this, or we're not going to be successful as successful, right?" And I think you do it to take one for the team, almost, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When we talked about building the team and acquisitions and as you guys were growing and your growth has been heavily linked to the strategic acquisitions like Safety Kleen, Hydrochem, PSC, those types, but how did you and your team evaluate the unique I guess the financial or the operational or the regulatory risk associated with integrating these massive companies? And then what was your personal risk threshold that you were like, okay, these are some high stake decisions. I'm going to go or not going to do, pass or
Yeah,
not pass. Tell me, maybe walk a little bit through that and how that happened or what you guys
sure.
did to evaluate.
I think early on we had worked with a couple of consulting firms, and McKinsey was one of them that helped
Mhm.
us integrate some of the larger acquisitions we made. But over the years, we really developed a great playbook on both doing pre-acquisition as well as post-acquisition, right? So how do we evaluate and do all our due diligence, and how do we integrate the businesses after we've made a decision to go forward with it? And I think over the years, Brian Weber, who now heads up our M&A group, has really honed that playbook, and we've set up an internal organization to do that.
Mhm.
And so I think we're really, really good at it. And I think I actually brought on one of the key McKinsey partners who's been on our board now for 10 years and has done an awesome job for us after he retired from McKinsey. And it is something that we really do well. And I don't know if anybody does it any better from people who've told me. And so I think that playbook has been, sort of a critical thing. I think the decision about finally making that ultimate, go or no go decision, we really involved the board. We
Yeah.
really got their feedback and we really collaborated with them. And We, in 40 plus years of being chairman of the board, we have never had a, a decision by the board that wasn't unanimous. And so look at, if we're going to make a vote and someone's not feeling comfortable about it, well, we're going to continue to work on, what are the issues here? How do we solve your uncomfortableness with something that maybe we're contemplating here? So I think realizing that you need to have the board support, you need to have your leadership team support, but ultimately when you do make that final decision, it still can be gut wrenching, right?
Sure. I mean, especially when maybe potentially you're taking on environmental liabilities for some of the assets, and it's like, do I have enough due diligence to determine the real amount that I think I'm going to have to take on, right? And that's got to be tough.
It certainly is. And the thing that I always looked at is that's the business we're in. And so if we're acquiring a business and all of a sudden some environmental liability pops up, whether it's a offsite Superfund issue, or maybe they have some problems on one of their sites that we're picking up, that's our business. We felt really comfortable about taking on those kind of risks. Some of the other risks become even greater of a challenge for us, obviously, that are out of our control. But
Right.
I think, we've done a good job here and we've had a good track record.
I think so too. I mean, when you talk about being in this business and the importance of building a solid team around you, how important was that to build and, for the scaling of your business? I mean, I think we've touched on it in the previous conversations that we just recently had, but, what specific strategies did you employ to foster, say, like employee loyalty and cohesive culture over the 4 decades that's really helped you grow this business?
Well, I think, again, one of the nice things about being a public company is you've been able to share opportunities of growth and financial wealth and growth with a lot of your employees, right? They could get stock options, they could buy some of the shares, they could be given performance-based share programs. And so there's nothing that makes me more happy to see some of our leadership here really doing well for themselves, because the stock is appreciated and they hung in there with us. They might not have been the highest paid, but they got stock and they got performance-based awards. And so going public and having that, sort of liquidity for them, that was an important part of keeping people here. We did lose a number of people over the years, as you would any business after 45 years, right? I'm proud to say that I think my last count is we've had 20 people leave to become CEOs of other companies.
Yes.
And
I thought that was amazing stat, actually, that you mentioned when we met a couple months back at the EI Digest a conference in San Diego. I thought, wow, that is really impressive. You get some quality people that work for you that now started their own businesses or went to go run other businesses.
Exactly. Yeah. And you hate to see them leave in many, many examples, but in some cases they've come back after we've maybe bought their business, after we acquired them, that they went off.
They
And so,
boomeranged.
yeah, but that Clean Harbors alumni is strong out there. And I always pride myself in the fact that you were an important employee while you're here. When you leave and go off, we want to maintain that relationship and be able to go out and have a beer together still, right? And
Yeah,
so I think that relationship, this is a very small community
it
of
is.
people in our industry, and it's nice to maintain those relationships.
Well, now they can become partners with you because, invariably, all these companies, they might be able to do most of the things, but they can't do everything. So everybody needs partners.
Everybody needs partners. We need partners today, and
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you touched a little bit on technology, and I'm a little bit of a technology geek myself in the sense that, back when I was running a consulting business for waste management and selling services, and I used you guys as vendors to deliver the services for our clients. We had to develop our own software too. And we released our software back in 2012, and then it kind of grew. And then we were like, we got to modernize this thing. We got to make it better. In 2018, we started to redevelop it and make it a cloud solution. And, everybody who was wanting to be a differentiator realized the data, was the big thing. And I always said, he who holds the data holds the work.
That's so true.
I mean, right? And you can get into that and maybe talk a little bit about your interest in, you created the WIN system there at Clean Harbors and how that really built out to just build your whole platform.
Absolutely. So Win today is over 750 applications, and it basically is the supporting software for our entire business. We have a CRM, and we also have all of our financials in Oracle, with HR and finance, GL, all that kind of stuff. But Win is everything around waste tracking, invoicing, quoting, contract management, you name it.
Mhm.
And I think your point is we have the data. We have a massive amount of data, not only data that we've generated ourselves, but also through the acquisitions we've made. We've kept that data. We have an on-prem data center. And one of the things that we're really doing is mining gold out of that data now. We're building co-pilots, we're building agents, we're building assistants. We're using the classic machine learning. We're also using generative AI. We're actually kind of creating our own Clean Harbors GPT to talk to that data.
Yeah.
And so I wish I was 40 years younger, because I look at where the technology is going, and I say, this is so much fun, and this is going to be life-changing for companies and for people. And that's why I stayed on as a technology officer here, while I stepped down. I just find it to be amazing technology that we can continue to employ here and do a better job of servicing our customers.
Well, and that's a great, kind of a segue from the big daily day role and into kind of like a passion role, a passion play role, right? I think
Absolutely.
that's just kind of gets you still something to stay connected. You're still involved with the business, but maybe not so at the top all the time. And now you can still have a big impact. I think it's still an amazing segue there for into the technologies. I mean, because technology is changing. I mean, e-manifest has still not been cracked. I mean, as effectively as as EPA would love to see it, and most service providers are still struggling to have good communication back and forth with that. And I think the whole transportation logistics side of that whole equation is the big kind of letdown, because nobody has really figured out what's the most efficient way of just doing everything electronically. And it's still a challenge, and it's I think they're well meaning, but I still feel like it's going to struggle to really be what they envision it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think industry is probably a little ahead of EPA in that regard. And,
Yeah.
the investment that the government needs to make in their platforms is not kept up. And, if we want to build APIs directly with our EPA friends, it takes a lot of work to get those kind of things done.
They
So
don't have Microsoft probably in the background helping them design the interfaces and all the APIs that you need to integrate with every company who needs to do it and create standards for Clean Harbors and every other service provider.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
No.
It's so true.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, another differentiator, or I think something that's been on the horizon that everybody in the industry's kind of, enamored by, which is PFAS, right? I mean, this is like the hottest topic. It's the new frontier of the environmental revolution, so to speak. Climate change is right there too, but this is the biggest thing that's hottest that's in the industry now. How's Clean Harbors addressing the regulatory impacts industry's facing? And how do you think how big's the potential market for this for service providers like Clean Harbors?
From what I can see, it's going to be a big market, and I'm not sure whether it be bigger than the PCB market that was back in the 70s,
Yeah.
if you remember,
Yeah. Yeah.
but very similar. And it's sort of a different aspect to cleanup, right? Whether it's cleaning up water on site and removing PFAS from the liquid phase, or it's removing the solid materials and bringing it to an incinerator, like one of our hazardous waste incinerators, to destroy the PFAS. Yeah, I think the industry is really well positioned to serve EPA and serve the public in regard to getting these kind of contaminated sites cleaned up and removed and remediated. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think the technology is available. We've proven with DOE that we've got the technology to destroy the PFAS in our plants, And we hope that the continued regulatory framework will be created to really turn that whole cleanup effort on.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think EPA is still trying to evaluate some of the new limits that they recently set last year, and now the new administration's kind of pulling back a little bit, saying, "Well, we're going to reassess." And so there's certainly uncertainty on where things are going. Right now it seems like, but a lot of people are very cautious and concerned, and I think the framework of where PFAS sits in CERCLA is kind of one of the biggest challenges a lot of people are struggling with, is just because, wow, this could be, anybody could be pulled into a CERCLA situation when they really don't have responsibility for it. And so I think if it went to RECRA or created its own PFAS regulation, I think that would be the best situation in moving forward. And I don't know where EPA is going with it yet, but I think that some of the topics we are talking about on the podcast on a regular basis.
Sure. And I think it's needed. It really does. That framework is needed. And I'm hoping that, the regulatory agencies will continue to create that framework that'll make it so that everybody knows what the playing field is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, like, landfills who accept waste, they didn't generate the waste, they're just storing it. And now all of a sudden they potentially could be Superfund sites because, it's where does the compliance, really land? And I think that's the ambiguity that's out there right now that still needs a lot of clarity.
Yes, I agree.
Well, let's talk about Undercover Boss, because I think that's a great story. And I think you went through a really interesting experience there. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that experience. But, what was the most surprising impact or most surprising or impactful lesson you learned from the day-to-day realities of your frontline employees? And maybe how did you take that information and make subsequent decisions at your executive level?
It was a great experience. And, as much as I thought I knew our employees, because I spent a lot of time in the field and traveled all over to our plants and knew many, many employees over the years. When I got out and started traveling with some of the drivers or working with some of the field supervisors on some of the projects they're working on, it was eye-opening. It was surprising to hear maybe how they thought about corporate, how they thought about leadership, what their issues were, and and I didn't believe any of them recognized me. So I thought I did a pretty good job of disguising myself there to that. And, so I think, our people work incredibly hard. And in one event, I was inside a tank with a woman who did that every day. And it was in Chicago, and it was extremely hot. And she was cleaning rail cars out as part of her job, and really appreciating the facilities that she had to work in, and maybe the lack of a locker room for a female employee nearby. And, you started really seeing firsthand things that our employees were challenged with, whether they were out in the field or they're actually working in one of our plants. And, driving with a truck driver, there isn't anything better than driving with a driver. Boy, you're going to hear everything that you probably don't want to hear, but it was a great experience to hear feedback directly from one of our drivers driving up and down the highway here.
I'm sure there was some of the moments that probably weren't caught on tape that you got to hear some, unvarnished direct conversations. And I'm sure that was very impactful for you as well.
It was. And also to see how maybe supervisors interacted with our employees too. Were they treated with respect? Were they supported? Because I was just sitting on the sideline, maybe at the dock, and wondering, where is the supervisor here? Oh, he left early today. He always leaves early. And hearing little tidbits of things like that was sort of interesting. But it was, it had a little bit of downside to it, and that is that people realized how approachable I was in there. And I started getting reached out by a lot of employees via phone and email after the episode aired. And even today, unfortunately, people want to skip the chain of command and they want to reach out to Alan and, hey, I remember you on Undercover Boss and you helped out this person. And wondering if you could help me out. And so
Right.
kind of fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good to be the people's CEO, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and I think some of the changes you made, were there anything, like you said, the women's bathrooms, did you, implement a lot of these like things like we have to fix this. We can't just let them not have, the utilities they need. And talk a little bit, if you could, maybe some of the things you implemented as a result of Undercover Boss.
Yeah, I think we came back and really talked a lot about the feedback. I used it, and by the way, they reached out to me a couple of years before and wanted us to do
To
it,
do
and
it.
it just didn't have the time at when they asked, but we ultimately agreed to, and we circled back together as a team and sort of brought all the feedback together and said, hey, these are some of the things that we should be thinking about here, and I think putting out an employee survey and trying to get more feedback. So now we
Mm.
have a regular broad employee survey to kind of get employees feedback. And we set up, some employee resource groups. We have 7 employee resource groups now set up to, have the, employees who want to do it themselves, but they want the company to support them at the same time. So I think there was some really good things that came back from that. And I think we all had an appreciation of how hard our team members work, but I think having that direct interaction with them and bringing that message back to the executive team, I think was helpful.
That's great. That's great. I mean, seeing you go on that, would you recommend other CEOs of large service organizations to participate in something similar to this? I got to imagine it's very beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've watched a lot of those other episodes, and I find watching them is brings back good memories also, but it also kind of says, what, this guy is really having an opportunity that he otherwise wouldn't have, to be able to kind of be out there and do what he's doing without them saying, "Oh, that's the boss. I gotta hide what's really going on here."
Yeah, I can't be, yeah, I can't, I got to be protecting myself here, not giving the real story. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Um, when I was reading the book, it was a great book, by the way. I really loved how you prefaced a lot of the chapters with some major event or regulatory, dynamic that's just catapulted your organization, or that was really helpful to see your journey of how things were tied to each other and how the company grew. I really appreciate that in the book. But one of the chapters I want to touch on is chapter 30, and it's your leadership book. I mean, it's your leadership chapter in the book. And there was a couple things there that I thought was great. It said you reflect on some of the qualities and skills that make a good CEO, and some of the ones that you possess to help grow your company. And I wanted to read a few of these and just get your take on them.
okay.
So one of them was, there's no shortcut to excellence. Another one was, I believe another great quality is that quality that makes a good leader is curiosity. And another last one, it's another one here that I thought is great, is I believe one of the secrets of success to be able to grasp the complications, the implications, the subtleties of your business, to be able to take it back, break it down to its most simplest things. And like, this is how you do it. And I think if you could talk a little about those three items, if you could, like,
Sure.
that would be interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm a business process guy, and I have always kind of felt back when we started initiating business process reengineering, probably in the middle 90s, that understanding sort of your business and all the different processes that go into it, and understanding how to break down all the barriers that get in the way of a business performing better. And so I think I'm one of those guys that really drives efficiencies. Technology is an enabler of that, but more importantly, I think getting the right people in the room and trying to understand the business process and trying to, like I say, simplify the problem and break it down into manageable pieces so that you can attack it and make an improvement in that business. So I think that was really, I think, an important skill that I have, and one that I think is used throughout the business even today. We released a big software package last night, and I'm I walked down and challenged checked in on the team that's doing a lot of the phone calls for people calling in on the hotline and how's it going, and everybody's like high-fiving, excited, and I know that we're impacting thousands of people with that release that we did last night. And so I know that those are the kind of things that really excite me about making the business run more efficiently and breaking it down into small bites so you can eat it.
I love that. And that kind of leads into, I mean, that's kind of following up in your, being curious and understanding the complexity of things. But the other one that I really thought was there's no shortcut to excellence. I mean, the bottom line is you have to put the time in to be good at what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think Dan McCarthy, as I mentioned, is my lead director, my force lead director. I mean, I learned a lot from him, and one of the things is there's no shortcuts, and whatever it is, there isn't shortcuts to be taken because in the long run, those are going to come back and bite you.
Right.
And I think our focus on safety and empowering any employee to shut a job down
Yeah.
at any time if they feel like it's an unsafe condition, that to me is excellence. And I think, it's like, how do we measure near misses? How do we measure confined space entry safety permits? How do we measure things to make sure that every employee goes home every night the same as they came in,
Right.
And so that safety is such a critical part of our company, and not cutting corners is so important for that.
Well, and just helping people understand that they actually do have the power in their own hands to do a stop work, right? Even at the entry level, like if it's unsafe, call stop work. We will stop and listen, right? You will
Right.
stop and figure it out. I mean, I think empowering employees that's a real important piece there. And I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really good. Yeah, I thought that was really great that chapter on leadership and some of the skills. And there was a few other ones in the book. I'm not going to go through them all because I want people to read this book. It's a fantastic read. But
Great.
another chapter I was inspired by was your chapter on giving back. And, if you could share with us why it's so important to help others and why you set up the McKim Family Charitable Foundation to help others, give a little bit of background on why you did that and why it's so important to you.
I think first, I've been blessed beyond, my wildest dreams financially and personally, with 4 beautiful children and 11 grandchildren. I every day I count my blessings, and but I also realize that not everybody is as fortunate as me. And early on, I got involved with different organizations that had needs, and I wanted to be helpful, whether it be in a small way or a large way, to support them. I also wanted to give back to my alma mater. I wanted to give back to Mass Maritime for their wonderful programs there that create so many wonderful employees of ours. Hundreds and hundreds of employees came out of the Maritime Academy, and so there's in my mind there's a real need for people who are successful to give back, and if they don't give back, then what are they doing?
Yeah.
There's only so
Why
many
are we
things.
here?
Why are we here? Aren't we
Right.
here to help one another? And
That's right.
whether it's a local hospital or it's a local food pantry, if we have capacity, we need to help, right? And I wanted to instill that into my children, and that's why I created the Family Foundation, because I wanted my 4 kids to be part of that. And when I pass away, I want them to do that. I want them to, run that foundation and make good decisions and help others.
Well, I think you're doing just an amazing job with that. And I couldn't be, more proud to just say, I know Alan McKim
Oh,
and
that's so
thank you
kind of you.
for doing that. I mean, it's amazing. And, you can tell your Christian faith is just immense. Putting together a charitable foundation like that and giving to others is just really the true essence of humanity and what we do in life and what we should be doing. I went through the final postscript, it's like the 10 lesson learned for, entrepreneurs trying to get into the business. Right. And they're really 10 here. I'm not going to go through all 10, but I just want to mention a few of them and you could just touch on a couple. But one is safety. We've been talking about safety being first, right? Safety's first. Second one was cash is king.
Yeah.
And, and then this third one was raise money when you can, not when you need to.
So true. It's so true. That's one thing that I have regrets about early on when I was running the business. When I was starting the business, I only had $15,000 invested in the company, and I really was borrowing on receivables and living hand to mouth. And I wish that I had maybe taken on a partner or brought more equity in. And because then when I really needed the equity, maybe it wasn't, the banks weren't willing to lend. I was too over leveraged. And so I think that was just one of the things that I always look back and say, maybe those first 10, 15 years in business might have been a little bit easier if we had a little bit more cash and had not been so tight running to the mailbox every day to get, paychecks covered.
Yeah, right. I like number 5. It said, build a strong professional advisor network. Have a great legal team, a good banking, a good accountant, and a good board of directors, right? Those were some like key ones there. And I think that's great words of advice. And be willing to take risk and fail, but obviously don't fail too often, but you got to be able to do that, right?
Absolutely.
Alan, the book was amazing. I think anybody who's in our industry, in the environmental industry, needs to read this book. I promoted it on my monthly newsletter that I do for the podcast and sends out to a couple thousand people that's on my list, and I get it out and share with, what's the latest episode, who's on the horizon, do kind of a news update for the month, what's going on. And then I always do a book of the month, and I highlighted your book this month.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much for that.
You bet.
It's really a tribute to the employees here at Clean Harbors. And, I've been blessed because of them.
Oh, I can. Yeah. It's great to have you on the show, Alan. I really appreciate your willingness to take my invitation to come on to the show. I think you are an amazing individual, an amazing leader in our business. You are kind of like one of the Mount Rushmore of the environmental business leaders in my mind. When I think about who's grown this business to where it is, this is great to have you on the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me, and I really appreciate your kindness. Thank you.
All right, Alan. Well, we're going to get this episode out here in the next week, and it's going to be great. And feel free to share with all your friends and your network. I appreciate it.
And I'll give you some feedback by email if that's all right along the way.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I would love it. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening and watching the show. If you enjoyed the show, then please share it with your friends and coworkers on social media and tell somebody in person. Thanks for being with us, ET Nation.